Hi. I've received a few recommendations for books, math topics, articles to explore, and I am making a bit of a list so that if I find something particularly interesting or if I stumble upon one of the topics that this recommendation deals with, that I'll have it to refer to. But for now, I have looked through a few of these recommendations, and one of them is called Measurement by Paul Lockhart. And I think it's great. I think that is what I want to read right now. So I've opened this PDF, and I'll put the link in the description of this video to the website where I found it offers this for free. There are some ads, but it's okay. And so I am going to read this now. So I got my tea. Grab a cup of tea. Maybe this will be a reaction, maybe I'm just going to read. You'll know by the title of the video when I post this if I'm just reading aloud or if it ends up being a reaction. But I'm excited, and let us begin. Measurement by Paul Lockhart. Chapter 1, I guess. Maybe not. There is no chapter 1 label. Hold on, let me start that again so I can put a marker in the video of this is when I start reading. Okay. Measurement by Paul Lockhart. Reality and imagination. There are many realities out there. There is, of course, the physical reality we find ourselves in. Then there are those imaginary universes that resemble physical reality very closely, such as the one where everything is exactly the same except I didn't pee my pants in 5th grade, or the one where that beautiful dark-haired girl on the bus turned to me and we started talking and ended up falling in love. There are plenty of those kinds of imaginary realities, believe me, but that's neither here nor there. I want to talk about a different sort of place. I'm going to call it mathematical reality. In my mind's eye, there is a universe where beautiful shapes and patterns float by and do curious and surprising things that keep me amused and entertained. It's an amazing place, and I really love it. The thing is, physical reality is a disaster. It's way too complicated, and nothing is at all what it appears to be. Objects expand and contract with temperature, atoms fly on and off. In particular, nothing can truly be measured. A blade of grass has no actual length. Any measurement made in this universe is necessarily a rough approximation. It's not bad, it's just the nature of the place. The smallest speck is not a point, and the thinnest wire is not a line. Mathematical reality, on the other hand, is imaginary. It can be as simple and pretty as I want it to be. I get to have all those perfect things I can't have in real life. I will never hold a circle in my hand, but I can hold one in my mind, and I can measure it. Mathematical reality is a beautiful wonderland of my own creation, and I can explore it and think about it and talk about it with my friends. Now, there are lots of reasons people get interested in physical reality. Astronomers, biologists, chemists, and all the rest are trying to figure out how it works, to describe it. I want to describe mathematical reality, to make patterns, to figure out how they work. That's what mathematicians like me try to do. The point is, I get to have them both, physical reality and mathematical reality. Both are beautiful and interesting and somewhat frightening. The former is important to me because I am in it, the latter because it is in me. I get to have both of these wonderful things in my life, and so do you. My idea with this book is that we will design patterns. We'll make patterns of shape and motion, and then we will try to understand our patterns and measure them, and we will see beautiful things. But I won't lie to you, this is going to be very hard work. Mathematical reality is an infinite jungle full of enchanting mysteries. But the jungle does not give up its secrets easily. Be prepared to struggle, both intellectually and creatively. The truth is, I don't know of any human activity as demanding of one's imagination, intuition, and ingenuity. But I do it anyway. I do it because I love it and because I can't help it. Once you've been to the jungle, you can never really leave. It haunts your waking dreams. So I invite you to go on an amazing adventure. And of course, I want you to love the jungle and fall under its spell. What I've tried to do in this book is to express how math feels to me and to show you a few of our most beautiful and exciting discoveries. Don't expect any footnotes or references or anything scholarly like that. This is personal. I just hope I can manage to convey these deep and fascinating ideas in a way that is comprehensible and fun. Still, expect it to be slow going. I have no desire to baby you or protect you from the truth, and I'm not going to apologize for how hard it is. Let it take hours or even days for a new idea to sink in. It may have originally taken centuries. I'm going to assume that you love beautiful things and are curious to learn about them. The only things you will need on this journey are common sense and simple human curiosity. So relax. Art is to be enjoyed. This is an art book. Math is not a race or a contest. It's just you playing with your own imagination. Have a wonderful time. On problems. What is a math problem? To a mathematician, a problem is a probe, a test of mathematical reality to see how it behaves. It is our way of poking it with a stick and seeing what happens. We have a piece of mathematical reality, which may be a configuration of shape, a number pattern, or what have you, and we want to understand what makes it tick. What does it do and why does it do it? So we poke it, not only with our hands and not with a stick. We have to poke it with our minds. As an example, let's say you have been playing around with triangles, chopping them into other triangles, and so forth, and you happen to make a discovery. When you connect each corner of a triangle to the middle of the opposite end, the three lines seem to meet at one point. You try this for a wide variety of triangles, and it always seems to happen. Now you have a mystery. But let's be clear about exactly what the mystery is. It's not about your drawings or what looks like it's happening on paper. The question of what pencil and paper triangles may or may not do is a scientific one about physical reality. If your drawing is sloppy, for example, then the lines won't meet. I suppose you could make an extremely careful drawing and put it under a microscope, but you would learn a lot more about graphite and paper fibers than you would about triangles. The real mystery is about imaginary, too perfect to exist triangles, and the question is whether these perfect three lines meet in a perfect point in mathematical reality. No pencils or microscopes will help you now. This is a distinction I will be stressing throughout the book, probably to the point of annoyance. So, how are we to address such a question? Can anything really be known about such imaginary objects? What form could such knowledge take? Before examining these issues, let's take a moment to simply delight in the question itself and appreciate what is being said here about the nature of mathematical reality. What we've stumbled onto is a conspiracy. Apparently, there is some underlying and yet unknown structural interplay going on that is making this happen. I think that is marvelous and a little scary. What do triangles know that we don't? Sometimes it makes me a little queasy to think about all the beautiful and profound truths out there waiting to be discovered and connected together. Whew, agreed. Well, maybe. So what exactly is the mystery here? The mystery is why? Why would a triangle want to do such a thing? After all, if you drop 3 sticks at random, they usually don't meet at a point. They cross each other on 3 different places to form a little triangle in the middle. Isn't that what we would expect to happen? What we are looking for is an explanation. Of course, one reason why an explanation may not be forthcoming is that it simply isn't true. Maybe we fooled ourselves by wishful thinking or clumsy drawing. There's a lot of fudging in physical reality. So maybe we just couldn't see the little triangle where the lines cross. Perhaps it was so small that it got lost among all the smears and pencil crumbs. On the other hand, it's certainly the kind of thing that could be true. It has a lot of elements that mathematicians look for: naturalness, elegance, simplicity, and a certain inevitable quality. So it's probably true, but again, the question is why. Now here is where the art comes in. In order to explain, we have to create something. Namely, we need to somehow construct an argument, a piece of reasoning that will satisfy our curiosity as to why this behavior is happening. This is a very tall order. For one thing, it's not enough to build or draw a bunch of physical triangles and see that it more or less works for them. That is not an explanation. It's more of an approximate verification. Ours is a much more serious philosophical issue. Without knowing why the lines meet at a common point, how can we know that they actually do? In contrast with physical reality, there's nothing to observe. How will we ever know anything about a purely imaginary realm? The point is, it doesn't matter so much what is true, it matters why it's true. The why is the what. Not that I am trying to minimize the value of our ordinary senses. Far from it. We desperately need any and all aids to our intuition and imagination. Drawings, models, movies, whatever we can get. We just have to understand that ultimately, these things are not really the subject of the conversation and cannot really tell us the truth about mathematical reality. So now we really are in a predicament. We have discovered what we think may be a beautiful truth, and now we need to prove it. This is what mathematicians do, and it is what I hope you will enjoy doing yourself. Is this such an extraordinary, difficult thing to do? Yes, it is. Is there some recipe or method to follow? No, there isn't. This is abstract art, pure and simple, and art is always a struggle. There is no systematic way to create beautiful and meaningful paintings or sculptures, and there is also no method for producing beautiful and meaningful mathematical arguments. Sorry, math is the hardest things there is, and that's one of the reasons I love it. So no, I can't tell you how to do it, and I'm not going to hold your hand or give you a bunch of hints or solutions in the back of the book. If you want to paint a picture from your heart, there is no answer painting on the back of the canvas. If you are working on a problem and you are stuck and in pain, then welcome to the club. We mathematicians don't know how to solve our problems either. If we did, they would no longer be problems. We're always working at the edge of the unknown, and we're always stuck until we have a breakthrough. And I hope you have many. It's an incredible feeling. But there is no special procedure for doing mathematics. You just have to think a lot and hope that inspiration comes to you. But I won't just drop you into the jungle and leave you there. Your intelligence and your curiosity will have to supply you will have to supply yourself. These are your machete and your canteen. But maybe I can provide you with a compass in the form of a few general words of advice. The first is that the best problems are your own. You are the intrepid mental explorer. It's your mind and your adventure. Mathematical reality is yours. It's in your head for you to explore anytime you feel like it. What are your questions? Where do you want to go? I've enjoyed coming up with some problems for you to think about, but these are merely seeds I've planted to help you start growing your own jungle. Don't be afraid that you can't answer your own questions. That's the natural state of the mathematician. Also, try to always have 5 or 6 problems you are working on. It is very frustrating to keep banging your head against the same wall over and over. It's much better to have 5 or 6 walls to bang your head against. Seriously, taking a break from a problem always seems to help. Another important piece of advice: collaborate. If you have a friend who wants to do math, you can work together and share the joys and frustrations. It's a lot like playing music together. Sometimes I will spend 6 or 8 hours working on a problem with a friend, and even if we accomplish next to nothing, we still had fun feeling dumb together. So let it be hard. Try not to get discouraged or take your failures too personally. It's not only you that is having trouble understanding mathematical reality. It's all of us. Don't worry that you have no experience or you're not qualified. What makes a mathematician is not technical skill or encyclopedic knowledge, but insatiable curiosity and a desire for simple beauty. Just be yourself and go where you want to go. Instead of being tentative and fearing failure or confusion, try to embrace the awe and mystery of it and joyfully make a mess. Yes, your ideas won't work. Yes, your intuition will be flawed. Again, welcome to the club. I have a dozen bad ideas a day, and so does every other mathematician. Now, I know what you're thinking. A bunch of fuzzy, romantic talk about beauty and art and the exquisite pain of creativity is all well and good. But how on earth am I supposed to do this? I've never created a mathematical argument in my life. Can't you give me a little more to go on? Let's look back to our triangle and the 3 lines. How can we begin to cobble together some sort of argument? One place we could start is by looking at a symmetrical triangle. This kind of triangle is also called equilateral, which is Latin for same sides. Now, I know this is an absurdly atypical situation, but the idea is that if we can somehow explain why the lines meet in this special case, it might give us a clue about how to proceed with a more general triangle. Or it might not. You never know. You just have to mess around, what we mathematicians like to call doing research. In any event, we have to start somewhere, and it should at least be easier to figure something out in this case. What we have going for us in this special situation is tons of symmetry. Do not ignore the symmetry. In many ways, it is our most powerful mathematical tool. Put it in your backpack with your machete and canteen. Here, symmetry allows us to conclude that anything that happens on one side of the triangle must also happen on the other. Another way to say this is if we flip the triangle across its line of symmetry, it would look exactly the same. In particular, the midpoints of the 2 sides would switch places, as would the lines connecting them to their opposite corners. But this means that the crossing point of these 2 lines can't be on one side of the line of symmetry. Else, when we flip the triangle, it would move to the other side, and we could tell that side got flipped. What? Oh, the point where the lines intersect is the same point that is the line of symmetry. And if you move the line of symmetry somewhere where the lines don't intersect, like this, see, like this, if you move that line off of the, if you move that point off of the line of symmetry, suddenly these two are no longer in symmetry. So the crossing point must actually be on the line of symmetry. Clearly, our third line, the one connecting the top corner to the middle of the bottom side, is simply the line of symmetry itself. And so that is why all three lines meet at a point. Isn't that a nice explanation? This is an example of a mathematical argument, otherwise known as a proof. A proof is simply a story. The characters are the elements of the problem, and the plot is up to you. The goal, as in any literary fiction, is to write a story that is compelling as a narrative. In the case of mathematics, this means that the plot not only has to make logical sense, but also be simple and elegant. No one likes meandering, complicated quagmire of a proof. I don't know that word. We want to follow along rationally, to be sure, but we also want to be charmed and swept off our feet aesthetically. A proof should be lovely as well as logical. Which brings me to another piece of advice. Improve your proofs. Just because you have an explanation doesn't mean it's the best explanation. Can you eliminate any unnecessary clutter or complexity? Can you find an entirely different approach that gives you deeper insight? Prove, prove, and prove again. Painters, sculptors, and poets do the same thing. Our proof just now, for instance, despite its logical clarity and simplicity, has a slightly arbitrary feature. Even though we made an essential use of symmetry, there is something annoyingly asymmetrical about the proof, at least to me. Particularly, the argument favors one corner. Not that it's so very bad to pick one corner and use its line as our line of symmetry, it's just that the triangle is so symmetrical. We shouldn't have to make such an arbitrary choice. We could use the fact that in addition to having flip symmetry, our triangle is also rotationally symmetric. That is, if we turn it 1/3 of a full turn around, it looks exactly the same. That means our triangle must have a center. Now, if we flip the triangle across any of its three lines of symmetry, favoring none of them, the triangle doesn't change, so its center must stay put. This also means that the center point lies on all three lines of symmetry, so that's why the lines meet. Now, I'm not trying to say that this argument is so much better or even all that different, and in fact, there are lots of other ways to prove it. All I'm saying is that deeper insight and understanding can be gained by coming at a problem in more than one way. In particular, the second proof not only tells me where the lines meet, it tells me where, namely, at the center of rotation, which makes me wonder, where exactly is that? Specifically, how far up an equilateral triangle is its center? Throughout the book, questions like this will come up. Part of becoming a mathematician is learning to ask such questions, to poke your stick around looking for new and exciting truths to uncover. Problems and questions that occur to me I will put in bold-face type. Then you can think about them and work on them as you please, and hopefully also come up with problems of your own. So here's the first one. Where is the center of an equilateral triangle? Now, going back to the original problem, we see that we have barely made a dent. We have an explanation for why the lines meet in an equilateral triangle, but our arguments are so dependent on symmetry, it's hard to see how this will help in a more general situation. Actually, I suppose our first argument still works if our triangle has two equal sides. The reason is that this kind of triangle, known as the isosceles, Greek for same legs, still possesses a line of symmetry. This is a nice example of generalization, getting a problem or an argument to make sense in a wider context. But still, for the average asymmetrical triangle, our argument clearly won't work. This puts us in a place that is all too familiar for mathematicians. It's called stuck. We need a new idea, preferably one that doesn't hinge on so much symmetry. So, let's go back to the drawing board. Is there something else we can do with these characters? We have a triangle, the midpoints of the sides, and the lines drawn to them from the corners. Here's a thought. What if we connect the midpoints? Does anything interesting happen? This is the kind of thing you have to do as a mathematician. Try things. Will they work? Will they yield useful information? Usually not, but you can't just sit there staring at some shapes or numbers. Try anything and everything. As you do more math, your intuition and your instincts will sharpen, and your ideas will get better. How do you know which ideas to try? You don't. You just have to guess. Experienced mathematicians have a great deal of sensitivity to structure, and so our guesses are more likely to be right. But we still have to guess. So guess. The important thing is not to be afraid. So you try some crazy idea and it doesn't work. That puts you in some pretty good company. Archimedes, Gauss, you and I, we're all groping our way through mathematical reality, trying to understand what is going on, making guesses, trying out ideas, and mostly failing. And then, every once in a while, you succeed, perhaps more frequently if you are Archimedes or Gauss. And that feeling of unlocking an eternal mystery is what keeps you going back to the jungle to get scratched up all over again. So imagine we've tried this idea and that idea. One day it occurs to you to connect the midpoints. What do we notice? Well, we've divided our original triangle into four smaller ones. In the symmetrical case, they are clearly identical. So what happens in general? Are all the triangles the same? Actually, it looks like 3 of them might just be smaller, half-scale versions of the original triangle. Could that be true? What about the middle one? Could it also be the same, only rotated upside down? What exactly have we stumbled onto here? We've stumbled onto a glimmer of truth, pattern, and beauty. That's what. And maybe this will lead to something wholly unexpected, possibly having nothing to do with our original problem. So be it. There's nothing sacred about our 3 lines problem. It's a question like any other. If your thoughts on one problem led you to another, then good for you. Now you have 2 problems to work on. My advice, be open-minded and flexible. Let a problem take you where it takes you. If you come across a river in a jungle, follow it. Are these 4 triangles identical? Let's suppose this is true. And that, by the way, is a perfectly fine thing to do. Mathematicians are always supposing things and seeing what would happen. And the Greeks even had a word for it. They called it analysis. Oh, I didn't realize that that's where the word analysis came from. Okay. That suddenly makes the class title Real Analysis make sense. That makes it actually interesting to know like the meaning behind the word analysis. Wow, okay. There are thousands of apparent mathematical truths out there that we humans have discovered and believe to be true, but have so far been unable to prove. They are called conjectures, A conjecture is simply a statement about mathematical reality that you believe to be true. Usually, you also have some examples to back it up, so it is a reasonably educated guess. I hope that you will find yourself conjecturing all over the place as you read this book and do mathematics. Maybe you will even prove some of your conjectures. Then you get to call them theorems. Supposing that our conjecture that about the four triangles is true, and, of course, we still want a nice proof for this, the next question would be whether this helps us solve our original problem. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. You just have to see if anything comes to you. Essentially, engaging in the practice of mathematics means that you are playing around, making observations and discoveries, constructing examples as well as counterexamples, formulating conjectures, and then, the hard part, proving them. I hope you will find this work fascinating and entertaining, challenging, and ultimately deeply rewarding. So I will leave the problem of the triangle and its intersecting lines in your capable hands. Which brings me to my next bit of advice. Critique your work. Subject your arguments to scathing criticism by yourself and by others. That's what all artists do, especially mathematicians. As I've said, for a piece of mathematics to fully qualify as such, it has to stand up to two very different kinds of criticism. It must be logically sound and convincing as a rational argument, and it must also be elegant, revelatory, and emotionally satisfying. I'm sorry that these criteria are so painfully steep, but that is the nature of art. Now, aesthetic judgments are obviously quite personal, and they can change with time and place. Certainly, that has happened with mathematics no less than with other human endeavors. An argument that was considered beautiful 1,000 or even 100 years ago might now be looked upon as clumsy and inelegant. A lot of classical Greek mathematics, for example, appears to be quite dreadful to my modern sensibilities. My advice is not to worry about trying to hold yourself to some impossibly high standard of aesthetic elegance. If you like your proof, and most of us are fairly proud of our hard-won creations, then it is good. If you are dissatisfied in some way, as most of us are, then you have more work to do. As you gain experience, your taste will grow and develop, and you may find later that you are unhappy with some of your earlier work. That is as it should be. I think the same could be said for logical validity as well. As you do more mathematics, you will literally get smarter. Your logical reasoning will become tighter, and you will begin to develop a mathematical nose. You will learn to be suspicious of sense that some important details have been glossed over. So let that happen. Now, there is a certain obnoxious type of mathematician who simply cannot allow false statements to be made at any time. I am not one of them. I believe in making a mess. That is how great art happens. So your first essays in this craft are likely to be logical disasters. You will believe things to be true and they won't be. Your reasoning will be flawed. You will jump to conclusions. Well, go ahead and jump. The only person you have to satisfy is yourself. Believe me, you will discover plenty of errors in your own deduction. You will declare yourself a genius at breakfast and an idiot at lunch. We've all done it. Part of the problem is that we are so concerned with our ideas being simple and beautiful that when we do have a pretty idea, we want so much to believe it. We want it to be true so badly that we don't always give it the careful scrutiny that we should. It's the mathematical version of rapture of the deep. Divers see such beautiful sights that they forget to come up for air. Well, logic is our air, and careful reasoning is how we breathe. So don't forget to breathe. The real difference between you and more experienced mathematicians is that we've seen a lot more ways that we can fool ourselves. So we have more nagging doubts, and therefore insight on a much higher standard of logical rigor. We learn to play the devil's advocate. Whenever I'm working on a conjecture, I always entertain the possibility that it is false. Sometimes I work to prove it, other times I try to refute it, to prove myself wrong. Occasionally, I discover a counterexample showing that I was indeed misled and that I need to refine or possibly scrap my conjecture. Still other times, my attempts to construct a counterexample keep running into the same barrier, and this barrier then becomes the key to my eventual proof. The point is to keep an open mind and not let your hopes and wishes interfere with your pursuit of truth. Of course, as much as we mathematicians may ultimately insist on the persnickety level of logical clarity, we also know from experience when a proof smells right, and it is clear that we could supply the necessary details if we wished. The truth of the matter is that math is a human activity, and we humans make mistakes. General mathematicians have proved utter nonsense, and so will you. It's another good reason to collaborate with other people. They can raise objections to your arguments that you might overlook. The point is to get out there in mathematical reality, make some discoveries, and have fun. Your desire for logical rigor will grow with experience. Don't worry. So go ahead and do your mathematical art. Subject it to your own standards and rationality and beauty. Does it please you? That's great. Are you a tormented, struggling artist? Even better. Welcome to the jungle.